Hello everybody, my name is Ryan Brothers, Field CTO and Solutions Architect here at IOTech Systems. Today we will be going over BACnet and BACnet discovery in the context of Edge Central. So in this video, I will take you through how to initiate discovery, the different environment variables that discovery entails, and all of that. Now this video does assume that you have Edge Central installed and up and running. It is a simple Debian package for Linux that you can install with dpackage. So right now I am on my Edge Central box in my BACnet directory. Let me actually up the font a little bit. 24 should be good. Okay. So, as I said, we assume that Edge Central is up and running. I'm running 3.1.2 at this moment. And I have a Docker Compose file. Actually, I have a few Docker Compose files. I have a Docker Compose file that I'll be using as my Docker Compose override file to initiate BACnet discovery. So just to make sure I am all cleaned, okay, so it removed those volumes. And now I'm starting from a clean slate. So let's dig in to this Docker Compose file. Alrighty. So in this Docker Compose file, you can see I have my device BACnet IP service listed and a few BACnet SIMs that will be used during the discovery process. So the main thing to focus on here are these environment variables. So device discovery enabled has to be true, obviously, for discovery to work. It is set to false by default, so that must be stated here. The BACnet network interface, that is an optional environment variable, and I will show you later why that's important as well. The BACnet default discovery mode, I will actually skip over that for now as well. And then you can assign some patterns to your discovered device name. So you see here that when we discover these, the device name pattern is going to be BACnet IP, vendor name, dash device instance. The admin state should come in unlocked. There are some device labels that we're going to add: auto discovered, the instance number, device type, vendor name, device description, and some more profile patterns here, which is all documented in the documentation. So the BACnet discovery properties is very, very important. So if I drag this out, and you can see we're on Stargeek BACnet stack. This is the BACnet stack that we utilized. Obviously made it our own. So if we look for present value, so present value is 85. And if we look at our discovered properties, it's 85. Usually it's going to be 85 present value. That is going to be the current value of the point. That's usually what you want. And if we look at the properties, or the objects, excuse me, we can see that we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 listed. So in this example, we're only going to worry about the analog inputs, analog outputs, analog value, binary inputs, and binary outputs, and binary values. We're not going to worry about multi-state inputs, multi-state outputs, or any of these other objects that we could discover. We're just going to worry about these 5 for now. All right. So now we have that all set up. We can actually do an Edge Central up. We're going to define the device BACnet. We're going to define BACnet SIM, BACnet SIM 2, BACnet SIM 3, the UI component, and then sysmanagement, and that should stand everything up. All right. So now to check, we can enter an Edge Central status, and there we go. The core common config bootstrapper will exit, so everything's up and running, so that's a good sign. So now we can go to our UI, and that's :9090. And there we go. We can see we actually have 3 devices. We didn't have to add them manually. We didn't have to touch them. If we go to devices, there we go. Now we can see our device name template, which is BACnet IP, the vendor name, and the device instance. We can see some labels that we defined and the description. These. And the cool thing about device discovery is during the discovery process, if it recognizes that, hey, all 3 of these devices had the same exact objects, same exact properties, we only need 1 device profile. So that's why you're only seeing 1 device profile here, is that all 3 of these simulators are exactly the same. So it was smart enough to say, hey, I only need 1 device profile. And if we look at this, you can see that we've only got analog input and analog output and analog values. There are no binary values associated with this particular simulator, so it didn't discover those. So now we can see that we can go in and we can control these and get these values. That's gonna fail. Nope. Okay, there we go. Now that we can get these values from these simulators. Now if we look in the logs, docker logs -f device BACnet IP, we can actually see how it works. So the discovery process finished, total 3 devices discovered, 3 devices are processed. So it added them to Edge Central. Now discovery will run. This is a pretty cool thing about Edge Central, is discovery will run over and over and over again. So you don't have to initiate a discovery if you don't want to on the device manually. So what that means is if you're doing a new integration or retrofit or even a new install, you can have Edge Central up and running, and then as you connect these devices to the network, Edge Central will just say, hey, I don't have that device, I need to onboard that device, without any manual procedure. So it's a pretty cool feature. So let's exit out of that. All right, so now that I've demonstrated that, what I'm going to do is issue an Edge Central down. That is going to stop all of my Edge Central containers. All right, and I'm going to do an Edge Central clean. And now all my volumes are gone, so I'm starting with a clean slate again. So let's go back into this Docker file, and I will explain in brief detail this macvlan network that we have up here. So in order for our device BACnet IP service to work with a local area network, we must set up something called a macvlan. Now this is a Docker specific thing, so it may be a little bit confusing at times, but hopefully when I explain it, you'll understand. So we define our XRT macvlan network in our Docker Compose override file. The driver is going to be macvlan. The driver ops, the parent is N01. And what that refers to, so if I issue an IPA, this is my local area network on this specific box, so N01. is what I need to define there. And then you have your IPAM config. So the subnet is your local area network subnet, which is mine is 192.168.55.0/24 insider range. The IP range, I've set that to the same thing as the subnet because I want it to be assigned an IP address. You can specifically assign static IP addresses to the device BACnet IP service, which I'm not going to get into in this video. And then my gateway of 192.168.55.1, and it is my gateway of the LAN. Now, a kind of a gotcha here on macvlan. Within your gateway, it must be set to promiscuous mode to actually work. So that's kind of a gotcha. When you're using macvlan, your gateway must be set to promiscuous mode for this to work. Okay? Alrighty. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to ETH1. And once we stand all this up, I will show you what that actually means. All of this stuff is going to remain the same. We're still attached to the XRT_MacVLAN in our networks of our device BACnet IP and the EdgeX network. So now what I'm going to do, let's do the same thing. I do not need the BACnet sims now because I'm going to discover a BACnet device on my local area network. So there we go. Clear that. Edge Central status. And we look good. So now, let's go back in here. Admin is the default. And look at there, we already have a device. So this is a BACnet controller that I have hooked up to my local area network, the BACnet IP. And you can see we have our device profile here. And as you can see, we have our binary inputs, we have some analog outputs here, analog inputs, counters. Here's our voltage outputs, where are going to be analog outputs, and some other interesting things. So let's unlock that. And now we can read from our discovered device. Cool. Now in your workflow, especially when you're looking at, analog input E1, I mean, what does this even mean? So in the workflow, when you discover a certain device, you can actually export the YAML files and open them, and then you can change the names, add tags, and everything to your heart's desire. So everything is here for you to work with, so you don't have to redo all of this from scratch. All right, now that we've seen that we have our device and our device profile, let's go back to our Docker Compose file here, and I will explain this environment variable right here. So we have it set to ETH1. So what does ETH1 actually mean? If I quit out of this and I do a docker inspect that service, well, you see here in our networks, we have two networks. So in terms of Docker, Docker sees this as ETH0, and that's our internal EdgeX network, and this as ETH1, which is our macvlan sitting on our local area network. So that is what that means. It doesn't have anything to do with your physical machine. That's all defined up here. All right. And this concludes the video on BACnet discovery. Hope you found it helpful, and thank you.